Hello, this is A Voice in the Darkness, and I'm your host, Gwendolyn Forte. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode. Whether you are at home, in your car, at the gym, maybe you're at work, or possibly you're in a hospital room and you're listening to this podcast for the first time, I want you to know that I am so glad that you are here on today. My goodness, let me tell you, the purpose of A Voice in the Darkness is to encourage, to uplift, and to enlighten. And so many people around the globe are walking through different challenging times in their life. It might be, a challenge or just an overwhelming season. But I want you to know today that whatever season you're in, whatever you're facing, that you can make it. You might ask, Gwendolyn, how do you know I can make it? Well, I've walked through some tough times in my life. And you know what? Someone spoke an encouraging word to me. And that word changed everything. It changed my direction. It caused things to shift for me. And I was redirected into a place where I can walk forward knowing that I could make it. And I want to encourage someone today, if you're at a crossroad in your life, you're at a difficult place in your life, you're at a transition, you feel overwhelmed, you feel like you're in a place of despair or hopelessness, I want to encourage you not to give up, not to give in, and do not throw in the towel. You are more than able. You can do it. You got this. Okay, you got it. Well, the title of this week's episode is called Courage to Overcome. Courage to Overcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm always excited to share, and I always love helping someone to just get on the right path instead of, saying you can't do it. I want you to know you can do it. You can make it. And I want to talk about courage to overcome. Courage is a word that maybe we don't use a lot today. I don't hear that word a lot, but it's something that we all need, no matter what you're walking through, whether you are a housewife, a student, an entrepreneur, a minister, whoever you are, we all need courage. And courage is the ability to do something, that frightens one, that frightens you, that frightens me. The ability to do something that frightens one. Or another definition is strength in the face of pain or grief. Strength in the face of pain or grief. Another definition is the quality of being ready and willing to face negative situations involving danger and pain. So it's the quality of being ready and willing to face negative situations involving danger and pain. Another definition, which I love from the Merriam-Webster dictionary, is for courage. Courage is mental or moral strength to venture, persevere, and to withstand danger, fear, and difficulty. I'm going to read that again from the Merriam-Webster dictionary. It's mental or moral strength to venture, to persevere, or withstand danger, fear, or difficulty. So in all of these definitions, I love to just hear them because we're talking about the ability to do something even in the face of fear, even if it frightens you. It's the strength in the face of pain, right? Or grief, or situations involving danger and pain. And this last definition, mental or moral strength to venture, to persevere, to withstand danger, fear, and difficulty. And so I know today that we are all faced with different challenges that come against each and every one of us. And if you're listening to this podcast for the first time, maybe it's something that you are actually facing right now, whether it's in your family, in your community, in a relationship, at your job, wherever you are, you're facing a challenging situation and you're in need of courage. You're in need of courage. Well, I want to encourage you. I want you to be fueled today with courage. Now, I want to talk about a few types of courage, and then I want to talk about a couple of scriptures that can help us and give a few examples of some courageous people in this podcast. Physical courage is one type of courage, okay? Physical courage. You know, sometimes you are feeling fear, yet you choose to act, right? So it's bravery that you are exemplifying, even if you may face bodily harm. So it's a physical courage. You're feeling fear, yet you choose to act. So it's bravery that you are experiencing, even though you may experience some bodily harm. Or there can be emotional courage. So you're going to follow your heart, right? You're open. You're opening yourself to feeling all the types of emotions. You're open to that. You're going to follow your heart. And so that's an emotional courage. Maybe it's intellectual courage that you're needing. So you're going to be expanding on your horizons. You're going to let go of what's familiar. You're going to venture out there. It's this intellectual courage that you're going to just take some steps to learn new things, right? And sometimes you need courage because it's easy to stay in the familiar. Well, what about social courage? To be oneself in the face of adversity. This is going to take risk, right? And social courage to really be who you are. And, you may get rejection. You might get some adversity, and it's going to take risk. Or moral courage, standing up for what is right. Standing up for what is right. My God, today, moral courage is so needed in today's culture, in today's society. Things are happening everywhere. Everything sometimes it's not so good that we're seeing on the news and the media. A lot of violence and death and sickness, and you just need moral courage, right? And then spiritual courage, facing pain with dignity and faith. Facing pain with dignity and faith. And I love this aspect of spiritual courage and would love to point, a few people out that had a lot of spiritual courage and maybe even exemplified these other areas as well. I named physical courage, emotional courage, intellectual courage, social courage, moral courage, and then spiritual courage. And I love it. And I want to talk about a scripture. As you all know, I am a believer, and one of my favorite books is the Word of God, the Bible, the Holy Bible. And 1 Corinthians 16 and 13, Paul encouraged the Corinthian church. He told them, be on guard, stand firm in the faith, be courageous, be strong. So here we are now. And Paul is telling them to be on guard. So, you think on guard, you think soldiers, you think military. So he's telling them to be on guard, be vigilant. Now he's telling them to stand firm. So with courage, there's going to have to be some type of taking a stance, a position, whether that's a physical, mental, intellectual, emotional type of position. But you're going to have to stand firm and listen. He said, stand firm in the faith. What do you believe in? What do you believe in? Who do you believe in? Stand firm. Stand firm. And then here he goes. Here's this word. Be courageous and be strong. And I kind of see those words just being coupled together like they're cousins. Having strength and having courage go hand in hand. And another passage is in 1 Chronicles 28 and 20. 1 Chronicles 28 and 20. And David encouraged Solomon. And this is what he told him. David also said to Solomon, his son, be strong and courageous. Here it is, those cousins. And do the work. Do not be afraid or discouraged. For the Lord your God, listen, he said, my God is with you. He will not fail you or forsake you until all the work for the service of the temple of the Lord is finished. So we see here that David was encouraging his son Solomon, and he told him to be strong, to be courageous, to do an assignment. Sometimes we need the courage, we need bravery, and we need strength to do what God has called us to do. That assignment that you have on your life to do, you need courageous to do it, because sometimes you're going to experience opposition, adversity, hard times, and maybe you're experiencing that right now. And this word of encouragement is coming at the right time. I want you to know that God said in his word, 1 Chronicles 28:20, he says, listen, David told Solomon, God will not fail you or forsake you until all of the work is completed, the service of the temple. God is going to be with you to help you accomplish those things that you need to do. He wants you to know today not to be afraid. Do not be fearful. Do not draw back. Do not fear man. Do not fear faces, because I'm going to give you strength. I'm going to give you courage. And also there is a grace element here. Grace is God's ability to do what we can't do in and of ourselves. It's just not favor, which it is true. It's a favor, but it's also just the ability to do. Sometimes we just need a strength to come, an ability to do some things that's so hard, that's so difficult. And we're wondering, how can we do it? Well, God is saying that I want to give you the ability to complete the assignment that I called you to complete. Many of you under the sound of my voice have an assignment on your life to do some things, to build some things, to create some things, to write some things, to go places. And you're experiencing a lot of pushback. You're experiencing a lot of adversity, and things are coming against you. And you may feel overwhelmed that you want to give up. And I want to encourage you to have courage and to be strong with this two scriptures from 1 Corinthians 16:13, to be on guard, to stand firm in the faith, be courageous, and be strong. And the second passage is 1 Chronicles 28:20, when David encouraged his son Solomon to be courageous, to have strength, that God will help him and he won't leave him, he won't forsake him. And he didn't want him to fear, because God was going to help him to finish the work. What was the work? To build that temple. God is going to help you as well. You know, courage, as we were saying earlier, is the ability to do something that sometimes frightens us. And I want to take us to a book, and maybe you can go look this book up or grab it out your library or order it from Amazon. It's called Fox's Book of Martyrs. Very good book by John Fox. And this is the early church where we see so many different believers had a lot of courage and had a lot of strength in the face of death, hardship, persecution for what they believed in. And they experienced, a great amount of courage that they had in order to deal with the death right in their face, whether they were being stoned, whether they were being eaten by lions or poured into pots of hot boiling oil. They had some horrible deaths. And whether they was hung upside down, whatever it was, it took a lot of courage. And it takes a lot of courage not to run and not to flee, because, the natural thing in us is to fight or flight. And sometimes we want to run because we want to preserve, ourselves. But when you have something to do and God is calling you to do something, or there's a moral responsibility that you have, a spiritual responsibility, a social, intellectual, emotional, physical responsibility, that's when this courage needs to kick in, right? Courage need to kick in. And we see this in the book of Acts in chapter 7, when Stephen was one of the first recorded martyrs in the Bible, Stephen. And he spoke up and he spoke to the early church, not the early church, but he spoke to the Pharisees and those who were opposing the early church. And he gave them this major sermon from the beginning to the end, and almost like a major discourse of, what God did from the beginning all the way to Christ. And it angered them. It angered them because he spoke the truth, even in the face of opposition where he knew he could experience death, and he did. They were so angry. They were so angry that Stephen was speaking the truth about Christ. And they, got so upset. They all picked up stones. They took him outside the city and they began to stone him. And he said, Jesus, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. And he faced death that day. He's a martyr. And I don't know how many people can still speak truth in the midst of that type of opposition. But I believe that God is calling each and every one of us, whatever you're doing right now, where you could feel like you want to be discouraged, where you are lacking that courage to continue. I want to encourage you to continue, because there's other people like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., where we see in the United States of America, he was a major influence. Today we're experiencing a lot of the fruit of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s courage. And he made a decision because he saw a lot of injustices, and he took a civil stance to say, no, this is wrong. To have racial injustice, racial discrimination, and it was wrong. And he said no, and he took a stance for it, and he rallied people in a peaceful way, in a non-violent way, to see change come for not only for that time, but for the generations to come. And he faced death. He didn't just die a normal death. He was assassinated. And even then, if you read more about how he died in the hospital, it's documented that he didn't just die a death, but that he was even murdered in the hospital. And so many things are not known around this courageous man who took a stance. And now today, because someone said, no, I need, not just a spiritual courage, moral courage, social courage. All of these things in one. He took a stance, and now breakthrough has come. We have courage today to stand as well. And I want you to know we all have courage on the inside of us to overcome. Stephen had this courage in the Bible. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. today. So we don't even have, we can bring it into our day's society. We can bring it into our culture. And what about your parents? Have you seen different situations in your own household where someone took a stance for what was right and they had courage? Well, right now, we need courage to overcome. Courage to speak up. Maybe you need courage right now to overcome. Courage to speak up in your family for a situation. Maybe courage on your job. You see some things that are not right and you're afraid, but you need to speak up. Maybe courage to bring some change in your community. Whether it's a social justice, that you are standing for because you see so many injustices. And maybe you need to speak up in court. Maybe you have a court case. And now you have to stand before a judge and a jury. You need courage right now. And I want you to know that God is here and he won't leave you. He won't forsake you. He will strengthen you to have courage, whether it's a court case. Maybe you are dealing with an illness. And maybe this illness was diagnosed as terminal and you're battling this infirmity. But yet in your heart, you know that God is telling you, you shall live and not die, but you need courage. While you're walking through and facing, this onslaught of death and infirmity, be encouraged today. God is a healer. He will not leave you nor forsake you. I want you to rise up in your faith and believe what he's told you. Courage is your portion. Maybe you are walking out of an abusive relationship or you're walking through a divorce because it was abusive. The relationship was not healthy. It was very destructive and you possibly felt trapped and felt like you couldn't do anything. But at this time, a surge of courage is coming to you. I want to encourage you today to believe God, to allow the strength of God to come on the inside of you. It's on the inside of you, but to come out of you that strength that's on the inside of you. I speak to that strength. I speak to the courage that's on the inside of you. That courage to overcome, that courage to rise up and be all that God has called you to be, and to break out of the limitations, to break out of the fear, to break out of that which would try to hold you in an old place. You need that physical courage. You need emotional courage, intellectual courage to expand your horizons, to break out of familiar places and step into the unknown, right? Maybe God is calling you to go back to school and to learn more, whether it's a PhD or a doctorate or a master's or a bachelor's. He's calling you to learn more. You need to take a risk, maybe social risk. You got to learn to be who God has called you to be, even though people may, say, I don't like you. But you got to take that risk and be courageous. Moral courage, standing up for what is right. That is huge in today's society. We shy back. We shy back from saying, no, that is wrong. Pushing that person, bullying that person, stealing, violating our brothers and sisters. It's wrong. But to stand up, listen, in today's society, if you stand up for what is right, they'll cancel you so quick. But we have to say, I choose to be courageous. To be courageous. Be the person that God is calling you to be. Be the person that you know in your heart that you're called to overcome obstacles. You're called to overcome every single blockade that has come against you. You are courageous. You are bold. You are strong. You are strong to break out. Listen, on your job, to do what is right. In your community, listen, to deal with the injustices in your community. Maybe you are going to speak, like I said earlier, in court. Do it. Stand. Speak the truth. Declare what you know to be. Maybe you're fighting that sickness. I'm telling you today, I break that assignment of death, destruction, sickness, and infirmity. And I say now, God, I thank you that you're giving your sons and your daughters courage to stand in the face of adversity. And I thank you, God, that every situation that they're facing, that danger and that pain, that they're rising up to believe you and to take you at your word, that they have courage to move forward and to overcome every obstacle. And like I said, I walked through a situation as a little girl where my father was abusive to my mom, and my mom needed courage to get out of that relationship because it wasn't changing. And I knew as a child that if she didn't leave, she was going to die. But thank God. Listen, thank God for courage. We're in need of courage today. And I pray that as you were listening today to this episode, that you have courage no matter what you're walking through in your life, that you don't shy back, that you don't draw back, that you do not feel like you cannot move forward, because you are more than able. You have the courage to overcome. You can do this. And I believe in you, and God is rooting for you on today. Be courageous. You have courage to overcome. My goodness. Well, I am always excited about these podcasts. So until next time, I'm your host, Gwendolyn Forte, with a voice in the darkness. Please subscribe, rate, comment, and share. I am on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple, iTunes, Google, Amazon Audible, so many different platforms. And so I'm so grateful that you tuned in today. So again, until next time, I'm your host, Gwendolyn Forte, with a voice in the darkness, signing off.